Hi, welcome to the shop. Today we're going to be making some parts for a friend who builds custom sports cars. And what we need to make is some pieces that look like this. A little bit different, but basically like this. What it's for, it's where the windshield wiper post comes up through the cowl and is activated on the inside. And that part turns. And this is what holds it together as it goes through the cowl. There's a piece on the front where you can see it, and that's why it's rounded and looks good. And then there's another corresponding piece, the same, on the inside. And what it does is it sandwiches between this shaft here and makes it solid and allows the wipers to work. So we're going to be working on that today. Okay, one of the tools we're going to have to use today is an adjustable reamer. And this is for fine-tuning hole sizes that don't come between a normal fractional drill bit size. This hole on this example piece here is way too big, obviously, for this, and it wouldn't be right. So we need to make this, we don't need a real tight press fit because this is going to be sandwiched between the two pieces, and the center part is the part that turns. But we want a nice fit anyway. So the fractional drills that we have don't fall close enough for my taste to make this work. So what we need to do is take the next size smaller fractional drill bit, and then we've adjusted out this reamer to about 3 or 4 thousandths bigger than the outside diameter of this threaded part. So as you do that, you just take a wrench and you just loosen one, and as you go out, it gets smaller, and as you come back towards the back, it gets bigger. So once you got it close to what you think, you can tighten it down. You can check it with a micrometer real carefully because these are hardened and sharpened, but you can be real careful, and maybe if you have a micrometer that you don't use as much for precision stuff, you can go ahead and use a secondary one for measuring these. And then once you get it, the best thing to do is to take and drill a test hole, obviously, and run your reamer through, and then make a better judgment. If you've got it right, you can always back it off one way or the other before you start making parts. So we've taken that step, and we've gone ahead and made a test, and we've used this, and we've got this reamer set for where we think we need it now. So we'll go on to the machine work next. Over here at the lathe now, and since our part outside diameter is around 1 inch, it's about 960, just a little bit under, we could start with 1 inch bar stock, just standard aluminum bar stock. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to make 2 sets of these to start with. We need 4 sets total. So we need about a little over 1 inch of material to make each one, because we're going to have to cut these at an angle so we can get 2 of them out of approximately a 1 inch piece. So we're going to turn down this bar to 960 thousandths, and that's not super critical. It's not a fit or anything. It just matches the size of these existing ones. And we made them line back at about 2 1/4 inches. That gives us enough stock that we can go ahead and part off our 2 1 inch pieces, and should have plenty of material once we cut them off at a 45. So we're going to have to make one and then cut it off, put it back in the machine, and then part it off, because we're going to have to get this 45 on the first cut, and you'll see how that works. So we're going to go ahead and cut across this face here to make that flat, and then we're going to take 40 thousandths off of this face right here. So that's the next step. Well, I found this tool that I had ground a while back on both sides with a radius, and it turns out it's really close to the radius that's on this piece. Plenty close enough. If you can see, it fits in there pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and mount this tool and get it set at the right height and the right angle, and we'll put the radius on the outside of this piece. Okay, we've got our tool in the holder, and we've got it on center and set where we think it needs to be in relation to where the radius is going to fall there. And we sprayed a little WD-40 on it just for a little bit of lube. There's not a lot of material to take off in that corner, so we're going to cut it down to about 230, it looks like, RPM. And we're going to go a little slower and see how that works. And we'll start with that, and we'll work in our way from, you know, from the outside there, and we can maybe get it all in one piece kind of without having to slow down or anything. We'll take a look. We'll give it a try. A little more WD-40. Bring it in a little bit. Okay, let's take a look at that and see how that looks. Well, after looking at the parts side by side, I think that radius is actually going to be just about right. So I'm happy with that. We're going to go ahead and drill the holes in here and get the first ones down in there, and then we'll do the reaming before we cut them off. So we'll get that center hole done. First thing we're going to do is we're just going to run our little starter bit, our pilot bit in there, center drill, and we cut it down a little bit in speed. Well, actually up from the radius part, we're at about 460 right now. So okay, we'll switch over to our fractional drill bit that's just going to be one size under our reamer. The drill is in the chuck, and we're going to drill it down about 3/4 of the depth on the flutes of this drill bit. That should be enough to allow us to make the two parts and a little bit extra. Okay, that ought to be deep enough. We will get our reamer set up here, and we're going to use the lathe to kind of help guide it as we get it started in the bore here. So we'll move this back. We'll finish this in there by hand all the way down to the bottom. Pull it out. We can blow this out a little. And then we'll try the piece in there and see how it fits. Seems like a good fit. Not much slop there. Okay, one last thing. Before I took it out of the machine, I went ahead and sanded it with some 400 grit paper. Made it a little bit easier to polish. And then I took it over to the polisher and I went ahead and polished it a little bit, because this end is going to be the end that shows, and I think it'd be a lot easier to polish it now while it's all one long piece and when it's a small little piece like that. So we're going to go ahead and see if we can get set up and figure out a way to cut this at an angle. Well, here's what we're going to try. I went ahead and took our miter attachment for the bandsaw. We're on the backhand side of the bandsaw now to show you this, and put a piece of wood on there. And I screwed a couple of these conduit hangers. Some people use them for plumbing too. They're just a pipe hanger, or some people call them a Minerlac. And that allows us to set this at a 45-degree angle so we can cut these off. And I want to get it set the same place every time. So I made a little gauge block that we could put up against the end here, and then we can butt it up to and go ahead and tighten these down. So we're going to go ahead and get that all set in there and buttoned up and ready to go, and then we'll take a look and see how this cuts. And we're going to try this setup and see how it works. No guarantees here. This is the first time trying this idea. So if this doesn't work, we'll have to come up with some other way to cut these off at a 45. So let's give it a try. We'll turn on our bandsaw and see what happens. with after we cut it off. Made a pretty nice cut, really. I think it's just about right. We want to keep it as short as possible because we don't have a lot of room for our little sandwich. So we're pretty close to the original. We're just a little bit bigger, just a little taller, but I think that'll be okay. So that piece came out fine. And for the bottom piece, we can just go ahead and take what's left over here, and we'll go ahead and we'll cut it off at a 90-degree there, and then we should have a corresponding piece for the bottom. So we'll go ahead and set that up in the lathe, and we'll go ahead and get that cut off, and then we'll see how we look from there. We got our piece back in the lathe, and we're going to go ahead and part this off. In other words, we're just going to cut it off straight. So what we've got is we've got this parting tool here. It's got a little indexable insert that can go in, and you can switch it out when it gets dull, so it's real nice. So we're going to go ahead and turn the machine on and just cut this off. WD. So there we have our finished pieces. You can see the sandwich here, how we got the gap in between for the fiberglass, the body go through there, and then the nuts will tighten down and lock that in place. So before we go any further and make any more, I think I want to go over to my buddy's house and take it over there and see how this actually works and see how it fits on the car. So if you don't see me again, then you know it all went well. Thanks for watching another episode of Matt's Machine Shop. And remember, good enough never is.